Hello everybody, my name is Parisa Tariq and you're watching DBTV Exclusive. The first cohort of the National Incubation Center has just graduated, and we figured there's no better time than now to interview Mr. Zouhair Khaliq, who is the mind behind Teamup, which forms an integral part of the NIC. Zouhair, as the founder of Teamup, where would you say incubators in Pakistan stand today, and how is NIC different from those?
So it's been a real interesting journey. About the Teamup concept came up about 3 years ago. My business partner Pervez Abbasi and I started thinking, what do we do, having spent like 25, 26 years in the industry? We wanted to know ourselves, what is it that we can do to give back to the younger people in the community? We're both techies, strange as that may sound from an older person coming through, but we've been part of this technology revolution over the last quarter of a century or so. And the concept was, how do we give back? How do we help people who are wanting to start their journey in this field? We put together a virtual online mentorship program for young people who would want to start their own business, and we wanted to help them with our own knowledge and assembled a team of about 40 or 50 friends, if you will, and acquaintances who were also accomplished people in their own fields. Some of them were startups who had succeeded, and we wanted to do this as a global virtual sort of exercise. Somewhere in the middle of that, the government of Pakistan announced that they wanted to set up an incubation center in Islamabad. They wanted to fund it, but they didn't want to run it themselves because they admitted that the private sector would probably add more value to the whole proposition. And we were one of half a dozen people who bid for it. It came about, shock, horror, magical. We won, and we started on the ground here in this center that you see right now, right from scratch. Now, there had been other startups or startup incubations before us in the process, but I think what we would like to think that we do, which is different from some of the other incubation centers, which were mostly academia based. So not to take away from that, but these were people who themselves had studied entrepreneurship through academia and then taught it to people who were aspiring to be entrepreneurs. In our case, we'd like to think that we've done something. We've been part of that journey. We created companies, we launched them, we grew them. Some of them failed, some of them succeeded. And I think that's perhaps what we bring to the table, which is slightly different from some of the ones at that time. Now, since then, having said that, the government's been very visionary. It's seeing the success of the National Incubation Center in Islamabad. They went out again and they wanted to do more of it. And so there are now 4 other centers, just like the one in Islamabad. The one in Karachi actually gets inaugurated today. What is it, the 11th of May today. The one in Quetta is coming online. There's one in Peshawar which has already been functioning for about 3 or 4 months. And there's one in Lahore as well, which is again thriving at the moment. So it's multiplying, which is a great feeling. I think it's great for the young entrepreneurs of this country.
So what's next for NIC? What is your vision for it?
So we have a 5-year plan with the government, and this has been year 1. We've just graduated the first cohort or the first batch yesterday as we speak. The future, I think, is very, very exciting because, as I said, suddenly the whole concept of entrepreneurship, startups is becoming a big deal in Pakistan. And I think it's a great way forward because Pakistan needs creativity, it needs innovation, it needs these young people to go out, create their own companies in a country where 65% of the population is below 200, of 65%, sorry, of 200 million people is a lot of people. Almost all of these 65% are under 25, 28 years of age. So they need more than just a job, because I don't think there will ever be enough jobs for all of these young people. Creating entrepreneurs, creating new businesses, I think is the way forward for Pakistan, and I think that's where the NIC will play its part in creating some of that future that we are aspiring to.
So what are the limitations that the IT ecosystem in Pakistan currently faces because in terms of availability of latest technologies?
So I'd say that we are very much up there with latest technology. So, we've gone through a huge revolution in technology and telecoms. It's been a 20-year journey. The last 4 or 5 years have been even more exciting because having set the rails with the mobile telephony business over the last 15 years, the last 4 or 5 years with data coming through, wireless data, 3G, 4G now, it is very much online with technology. The challenges, I think, are that the regulatory framework doesn't always allow the right breaks, if you will, for some of the technology companies to move ahead, to thrive. If we compare it, typically the entrepreneurship area with, say, the UK or Europe, what happens is the governments have structured their tax regimes in a way that they encourage the formation of young IT companies. They grow, they develop, they give them tax incentives to do so. More importantly, they give potential investors the tax incentives required for them to invest in some of these technology companies. And I think that is something that we need to work on. That's something we need to make happen. Again, the other challenge for the IT industry to develop is the need for investors. So Pakistan today does not have any seed capital or venture capital firms to speak of. There are many initiatives being taken at the moment, but they are still very much in the startup stage themselves. Today, ironically, the regulations do not actually provide for an entity like a venture capital fund. They are still covered under an ancient definition called the NBFI, the non-banking financial institution. I think that needs to change. It needs to come up to a different standard.
Okay. So have you taken any steps in that direction? Because to facilitate that process, you need to work in collaboration with the government.
Absolutely. So a lot of discussions are ongoing at the moment. We are not the only ones, obviously. We would like to think we're part of a very, very fast-growing ecosystem right now. So there are people in Lahore, in Karachi, Peshawar, Islamabad, etc., who are all talking exactly the same language. We are also having conversations with the government and the relevant people. And I think it's a journey. It's going to happen. It has to happen if the future is to be secured. So I think I'm very hopeful. I'm very optimistic that this will happen soon.
Okay, so how has the government's response been in facilitating this process?
Well, as I said, I mean, this initiative for the NIC, the National Incubation Center, actually came from the government. So Minister Nusha Rahman, who heads up the IT and Telecom Ministry, I think displayed tremendous vision when she insisted that this was going to be part of the road forward for the government, for the IT sector. So they've been extremely supportive. We've had a gentleman like Dr. Ismail Shah, who's at the time was the chairman of the PTA, the Telecom Regulatory Authority, but also was overseeing the ICT R&D fund, as it was called at the time, which is now evolved into something called the Ignite Fund, headed by Yusuf Hussain today. So I think all of these people, plus of course nameless other people all over the ecosystem who've been extremely understanding, who've been driving forces behind this whole phenomena. I think they need to be given huge amounts of credit for the vision that they've displayed. There are a whole bunch of industry stalwarts who've been working around the system itself, encouraging, pushing sometimes the whole evolution of this process. People like Salman Ansari, people like Parvez Iftikhar, people like Dr. Bakai. All of these people are amazing visionaries in their own right. And we are here today because of people like that and their vision.
I completely agree. Now, even though the Ministry of IT is doing a lot of work, particularly in enabling the youth and girls in particular, do you think that there are any additional measures that the state can take? For example, putting in taxation systems, like you said, that can facilitate IT growth?
Well, exactly. I mean, that's what I elaborated on earlier. we need a lot of restructuring in terms of our tax base. We need to make sure that they have the right incentives in place, not only for the entrepreneurs and the startups, but also for the investors. And I think that's extremely important going forward. In the UK, for example, they have limits on where, for example, up to an investment of, say, £100,000, if you invest in a company to that extent, you as an investor are then entitled to 50% of this back as a rebate if the company fails to take off in the next 3 years. So now, to me, that's a very interesting incentive for a person to put money into a company, because they know that at least half of it will always come back to them.
Yeah.
So I think measures like that are very much required. And the sooner that they happen, the sooner you will see this growth taking on further imperative.
Okay, now recently the Pakistan Software Export Board predicted that IT exports in the country are going to increase exponentially, but it failed to present a solid strategy to facilitate that process. So
yeah, as I said, I mean, all of this is part of the ecosystem now growth that needs to take place. It's good to have that vision and to announce targets, for example, but I think it's equally important to back it up with the right measures in the regulatory environment. On that particular one, for example, Pakistan has a very interesting number for the number of young software engineers who are online from here, who are earning good money. But they're under the radar, they're under the system at the moment. And what needs to be done is to recognize that this is happening, give them the right incentives for them to come into the right kind of regime, the tax issues and so on and so forth. It still needs to be tackled.
Correct. And now there's a major gap between the more developed Pakistan and the relatively underdeveloped Pakistan. Like only around 15% of the population has access to the internet, for example. So what would you say we can do to bridge that gap?
Well, I disagree with the numbers there for a minute, because, there's about 150 million mobile connections in the country out of a population of 200-some million. The last number I heard yesterday was that 50 million of those, or I think it's 56 million, correct me if I'm wrong, is 56 million people who are connected on the mobile broadband. So yes, traditional internet, perhaps not, but on their little phone screen, they're connected and increasing very, very rapidly. So it's almost like 1 million new connections going on mobile broadband every month, every 6 weeks. So it's getting there very, very rapidly. Even the unconnected parts of the rural Pakistan, if you will, are getting there pretty quickly. They have access, they have online, and a lot of people have said that, sometimes you say the world is round, but if you look at these people, for them the world is about that flat on a 3-inch by 2.5-inch screen, and they have access, and I think it's magical. It's going to bring about an amazing revolution in their thinking process, in their search for knowledge, and the ability to then do things with it. So I'm very, very hopeful, very excited.
Okay, now when we talk about the future of IT, there's a lot of talk about the fourth industrial revolution. So what would you say the fourth industrial revolution means to you, and what does it hold for Pakistan?
Well, it's happening right now. This is the fourth industrial revolution. So, the third one was the connectivity, the whole connectivity around mobile phones and so on. We're going through the fourth right now as we speak, and Pakistan is very much part of it, if maybe not slightly at the back end of it. But that's for us, people like us, to work hard at and encourage and take forward. But I think there's an opportunity, a huge one here, for us to actually leapfrog. So again, we did that with the mobile technology when we launched companies like Mobilink, perhaps about 25 years ago. There were only, say, about 3 or 4 million landlines in the country at the time. And then there was a stage where the mobile connectivity surpassed landlines, and nobody even worries about a landline anymore. It's just about your mobile number. So I think that we did a leapfrog. Similarly, I think we can do a leapfrog with today's technology. People don't have to have a wired internet to their homes. They're already getting it on a mobile phone. They're already able to access other parts of the world through that connectivity. I think we have talent, incredible talent in our youth at this point in time, who can get online, who can be software engineers, who can be developers of apps, who can do coding and so on. So as the Internet of Things starts happening, as the artificial intelligence and the virtual reality platforms start taking off in this region, I think Pakistan has a huge opportunity to leapfrog everybody else around and get to the forefront of that much sooner than other countries would.
Absolutely. Zouhair, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So to sum it up, Pakistan has great potential when it comes to technological advancement, particularly as we live through the times of the fourth industrial revolution. Thanks for watching. This is Parisa Tariq, and I'll see you again soon.